Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Forsgren, and thank you so much for joining us at the Developer Velocity and Productivity panel. We have a fantastic group of speakers joining us, and I will let them introduce themselves as soon as I say a little bit about myself. So, as I mentioned, I'm Nicole. I am a partner at Microsoft Research, and I have spent the last many years investigating things like software development and delivery, productivity, and how to make folks better at developing and delivering software across teams, across geographies, and across any type of industry vertical. So, Margaret, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everybody. I'm Margaret-Anne Storey from the University of Victoria. I'm a professor there in computer science, and like Nicole, I've been studying developer productivity for about the past 20 years. First looking at how tools could automate architecture recovery from legacy tools or legacy systems. Then when I observed developers, I realized that many of the assumptions I had about them were wrong. So then I turned to doing studies of developers, and during the past few years, I've been investigating developer productivity, developer satisfaction, as well as how developers collaborate through social and communication media, and more recently looking at how developers work from home during the pandemic.
Great, thanks. Amanda.
My name is Amanda Silver. I run the developer division at Microsoft. And so we work on all of the products that are focused on developers as the customers. I've been at Microsoft for the last 20 years now. And our products basically are kind of everything that a developer uses every day. Visual Studio Code, a lot of the programming languages and runtimes that a lot of developers use, like .NET or TypeScript, things like that. But a lot of my passion goes to developer productivity. I'm just really inspired by developers. I love having them as my customers because they're tech enthusiasts. And, if I release something in the morning, I can know by the end of the day whether or not it's a hit or a dud. So as a product person, I live for that kind of feedback, and it's just really awesome to work on behalf of developers.
Great. Bryan.
Wow. Well, I'm Brian Liles, and I'm actually truly awed by the people who are on this panel with me right now. Wow. So I am a principal engineer at VMware. When it comes to developer productivity, I like to say that I like to be lazy. So anything about optimizing productivity is about where I am. But as my career has gone, it's gone from, optimizing productivity for myself to now where I think about how do I optimize productivity for, 10 or 15 or 20,000 developers. So I'm deeply interested, not a scientist, but more of a practitioner.
That is a perfect introduction and segue, Bryan. Thank you. So I'm excited about this group because when I was thinking about productivity, velocity, and for developers, I really kind of wanted to get a mix of some of my favorite people and favorite smart thinkers that spanned research, but also real world practice. So we could talk about what we see, what we think. And so now I'm up to my first question. Why is developer productivity something that you pay attention to in your work? Or is it, right? So what are the things that you think about? When do you ignore it? When do you really pay attention to it? Bryan, let's start with you.
Okay, so I thought about this because I knew this question was coming, and one of the things I think about constantly is not doing too much. You can go ahead and try to optimize everything away to get that place of productivity, but what happens whenever you change one thing or change two things? So now what I think about is with everything that I do, does this give me joy? It's the Marie Kondo way of looking at it. Does this give me joy? Okay, well, I can deal with this, so I don't worry about it. But if it doesn't give me joy, I also think, well, how many other people is this affecting? Is it affecting 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000? And so the ways that I'm thinking about it now are like huge company-wide initiatives of like, how can I how can I not be a 1x developer or a 10x developer? How can I be a 10,000x developer? I know people won't like this, but I'm really thinking about ways to make a group of individuals and teams work better constantly. So yeah, I think about it all the time.
That's great. Margaret, what do you think about, how do you think about this, especially from like a research standpoint?
Yeah, likewise, I also knew this question was coming, and it's such a great question. And I had to think about why am I keep doing this topic? Why do I keep caring about developer productivity? And I think actually the point about joy really struck me there as well, because that's something that Artie Starr talks about in her book called Flow. And Artie Starr also mentions, she's described software developers as the magicians of the world. They bring ideas and they bring hardware to life. And so as a researcher, I study developers because I don't just get to study the magic of the tools and the technologies that we're building, but I also get to study the craft of how developer magicians individually and as a community create this magic. And the other reason, I guess, is that it's never boring. So during my career, we've had numerous paradigm shifts. Okay, the internet was before I started, but only just. But, higher level languages, integrated tools, DevOps, and social tools like Stack Overflow and GitHub. So it continues to fascinate me and it continues to change. So, yeah. And also in research, there isn't enough focus on the human and social aspects, I have to say.
I really love that point. So we've been talking about developer productivity, and I think that in and of itself is sort of an interesting point, right? Because developer productivity is this term that just gets thrown around a lot, especially when we think about the last year or two where we have found ourselves working, right? So we find ourselves in this heightened tracking and monitoring of work now that people are doing even more work from home than we used to do before. And, folks can't just walk down the halls and see people working at their desks. And so I wonder maybe how each of us define developer productivity. I'd really like to start with you, Amanda. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question. I think everything in the context of the developer shortage that we actually have right now, right? There's huge demand for talent, and the bottom line is that there's more demand for, what could be created than we have the capacity to actually build. And that's true on an individual team level, and it's true for the entire industry as a whole. And so, the way that I think about things is how can we mint new developers and kind of make them more productive more quickly? How can we make individuals and teams more productive? And then how can we kind of, scale better through collaboration, whether that's collaboration with other disciplines or it's collaboration, with the open source community, for example, and developers in other organizations. The bottom line to me is that it's obviously not lines of code or like the number of PRs merged or the number of releases that you've done. And as a product person, I'm a big believer in kind of customer driven metrics, like customer outcomes, right? And in a way, as an engineering manager, and I talk to a lot of engineering managers in my day job, what they kind of have like their developers on their team as their customers, right? It's like, how do we think about their job satisfaction so that they can have better retention over time? And like, it's so important in the context of the period that we're in right now, which, a lot of people have started to call the Great Resignation. We're just seeing a lot of churn in the industry, people looking for new roles. And so there's an absolute, talent war that's going on right now. So I think, you don't necessarily want to look at individual productivity. You really want to kind of focus more on the engineering system that your team actually works in. And so it's things like, how long does it take for somebody to onboard onto the team and to check in a meaningful feature, or to test a code change, or to see the change in production, or the mean time to remediation, and kind of how to, address those things and get that out as quickly as possible. And so I think thinking in terms of the larger system in which everybody's working, but I also think obviously a lot of that is inspired by the research that Margaret and Nicole have done. But also I'm very inspired by the Good Day research that you guys did also, Nicole. Maybe actually you should talk about the Good Day research. That was just really great work.
Sure. Maybe if that's okay, I'll jump in a little bit here. So I appreciate that mention, and I agree with you, right? It's not just about how individuals do work. It's not just about, a few things. It really is kind of a holistic way of looking at productivity. So some of the work that, Margaret and I did earlier this year looked at a framework for assessing and thinking about productivity as an overall measure. And so, one of the papers we put out was the SPACE framework. And it said SPACE. I love acronyms, if anything, because it helps me remember things. And so, SPACE it suggests that we look at productivity holistically. And like you said, not just lines of code. lines of code is nice mostly because it's easy to measure, but that also means it's easy to game. So space is, 5 things. S is satisfaction, and that can be individual satisfaction, or like you mentioned, it can be satisfaction with an engineering system. P is performance. So that's an outcome measure, right? So is it performance through the system? A is activity. These are the things that we're used to measuring. It's usually a count or a number. So lines of code, number of PRs, number of commits, a number of something. And then E is efficiency and flow. So this can be, did I feel like I was in the flow? Did it feel like I was, getting things done? It could be lack of interruptions, or it can be flow through the system, like a time metric. So that helps me even as a personal check. Did I miss something? Am I not thinking about something? Should I have metrics that are intentioned so that I make sure that I'm not throwing things out of whack by only measuring one thing? And it helps me think about teams as well. And then when I think about the Good Day project, that was a nice, quick way for individual developers to think about, how do I think about good days? And a bunch of this was inspired by some of my colleagues' work, Tom Zimmerman and Danae Ford Robinson, right? And it was, how do I manage my energy and not my time? Because it really is about having good days when I do my work.
Yeah, it all kind of reminds me a lot of, Paul Graham's original blog post many years ago around the maker schedule versus the manager schedule. And, I think Margaret also kind of reflected that she's inspired by developers because they're creators. And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that developers are creators, they are makers. And ultimately, they operate on the maker's schedule. And so, what we need to think about as managers of engineers is giving them the opportunity to get into that flow and to maintain that flow.
Yeah. Bryan, I'm curious to hear how this kind of hits you, and how this hits your brain, because you're managing so many different people, and how you think about developer productivity and that term in particular.
Yeah, that term is one of those interesting terms. So developer productivity, and then there's a couple more in the same realm where you hear it and you're like, well, what does that mean? So I will give you my spin on it before I tell you my thoughts. So I think about not all time sitting and typing on the keyboard is productive. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that just because you're sitting at the keyboard and typing, that you are doing something that is useful. As a VP level engineer at VMware, I'm actually kind of rare where I actually spent almost a quarter of this week writing software. And it's rare at this level to, and I don't do it all the time, and because I just wanted to solve this very hard problem. But I was thinking about, as I was coding it, how productive am I? And it's like setting up my environment. I'm an expert at that. My environment's set up. Getting access to software that I didn't write, and being able to see documentation and use APIs. Some of our software is 20 years old, and some of it's hard to use. A knock on productivity. Being able to share what I built and learned with others. That's good for my productivity and good for theirs. And I'm also thinking about those things. And then also taking this proof of concept, because, as a VP, that's really all I can write. I can't write production software anymore. That's a liability. But as this POC that I've written, is it usable on other people's machines? Am I giving this, if I give them this software to run, can they just download it, read the directions in the README, and then run it? And how much time do I sap from them whenever they can't run it? And these are all these things that I think about in productivity. And what I think is that there's a lot of companies out there who are just saying that I'm making this tool to make it easier to be a developer, to make you more productive. And you know what? I have a very low GitHub user number. Chris Wonstroff is a friend of mine. I remember when they started it, we had this idea. I have the distinction. I'm the first person outside of GitHub to create a gist. Back in 2008, some ridiculously long time ago. And I think about tools like GitHub, but I think about other tools where, we have all these tools. I have a toolbox full of tools, but just alone, they don't make you productive. Because what happens is they still don't help you get to where you want to be. And I have this whole developer philosophy on the journey where we optimize so much on the vehicle that gets us to the destination that we forget about where we're going. We talk about the plane that we're flying into Hawaii. but we don't talk about where we're staying in Hawaii. Or actually, you know what? We spent so much time thinking about this plane, we didn't even rent a hotel or get a house. And I think that a lot of these tools give you this false sense of security that just because you're using said tool, you know, I've been watching GitHub for years, like GitHub Actions, amazing. This new embedded development environment, I'm not using that yet because I have a really fast local machine, but I love seeing it. I love what the possibilities are. But we need to remember that all these tools, and I'm just picking on GitHub because you all are part of Microsoft. If it was somebody else, I'd pick on something else. But we have to realize that all these tools don't just make us productive by themselves. Like, you know what? If I have 5 hammers and all I need is a screwdriver right now, I'll get it in there, but I'm probably not going to get it back out. So we need to think about that whenever we think about productivity. So that's my short answer for that question.
That's awesome. And I really like that point. And I think that also brings me on to my very favorite question always is, what is the biggest misconception about developer productivity that you wish someone knew? And probably leaders and researchers. Margaret, can we start with you?
Sure. And I love this question as well. Thank you for putting it to me to think about. So, you know, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is worrying too much about productivity and not enough about experience. I mean, I know in space we said developer satisfaction and well-being is one of the dimensions, but even just shifting that a little bit and saying that, you know, looking at developer experience is really what's important. And we know from a lot of our research that if developers are, you know, feel happy and feel secure or excited about their work, that they're going to be productive, right? They're going to do good work. So that's just one thing I wanted to put out there. The other thing that I wanted to put out, and it's a little bit controversial, and it comes from my experience in trying to develop tools over the years, is that we're at the cusp of a paradigm shift of where AI is going to be used in software development. And it's super exciting. I mean, I'm really excited about the opportunities for AI at writing code, you know, at finding vulnerabilities in test cases and, you know, identifying bugs and also even streamlining the build and deployment process. But AI isn't magic, it's science, right? And it's what people do with AI that's going to lead to either good or bad magic. And, you know, this picks up a little bit on, you know, the issue of the big resignation or the great shuffle, thinking about how supporting those people in doing the really hard stuff, as Bryan was saying, you know, that plane, how it's going to get you to Hawaii. Well, why am I going to Hawaii anyway? The really hard problem for me when I'm going on vacation is deciding where I'm going to go, because there's only so many choices and I have to balance my needs with my family's needs. That's the hard part. It's not really booking the ticket or getting on the plane. So I think that is sort of one of the biggest misconceptions, that if we have all of these great tools, that will be enough. But you know what? I feel like everybody here, we're all on the same page in this panel. We're all saying the same thing and different things. But yeah.
Amanda, what do you think about this? The biggest misconception about developer productivity that you wish
Um,
others knew?
I think, you know, I think one of the things that I just see over and over and over again inside of teams, but in the industry overall, is that I think there's a little bit of kind of a gatekeeping and elitism that actually says that only senior engineers or engineers of a certain caliber can be, you know, productive engineers. And I think that, you know, in addition to kind of the paradigm shift of AI that Margaret was talking about, I think we're also in the midst of a paradigm shift when it comes to, you know, the introduction of low code tools, SaaS services that allow you to kind of build much more quickly for various different kinds of solutions. You know, I mean, obviously, like, I started in the era when a lot of people were using Visual Basic 6 and coming into the industry, learning how to do graphical user interfaces, and they built a heck of a lot of, you know, line of business applications that way, and basically kind of built up an industry from that. And there were a lot of people who didn't necessarily have a formal background in computer science or kind of a degree in computer science that were capable of building those kinds of solutions. And so I think, you know, the biggest misconception in terms of developer productivity, and I would say just kind of in terms of the way that we think about the industry overall, is that you have to have a 4-year computer science degree from an elite university to be able to contribute. I think actually there are many paths to the industry, and we can see and many roles across the industry as well. And not everyone needs to be an elite systems engineer, working on operating system kernels and things like that.
I love that. Bryan.
All right, time for some controversy. All right, so first of all, Amanda, you said something very important here. There's so many paths into computing, and you know what? One day I might get a degree in something. I don't know. But right now I'm busy working and solving problems. So, the fact that my parents couldn't afford a computer science degree and my school didn't let me know that there was other avenues, and, I'm just busy getting paid right now. I put that to the side. Respect it 100%. But am proof positive that you can do a lot of things if you figure out alternative methods of learning. But the controversial thing is that we and I'm talking about the community now. I'm part of it, so I have to accept this. Is that we come up with terms like developer productivity, developer experience, and what happens is people use those as crutches for lack of planning, just bad ideas, poor execution, poor leadership, and in a lot of cases, we talk about looking for better developer productivity or even better developer experience. And what we're really talking about is that, hey, your company or your business unit or your team doesn't have a plan. And we think that the lack of output comes from, these developers, if they could just be more productive, we would get through this. And you know what? That's not true. So that's just another way of saying that, the lack of planning is usually the cause of all these things that we're seeing. We're kind of, in some cases, we are using these productivity tools as a crutch. I will die on this hill that the term CI and CD they're not CI/CD. They're two different things. If you're integrating your software and you're delivering, deploying, or whatever your software, they're not the same thing. Die on this hill. I think Nicole knows this. I think I've actually, a little sidebar, I was at a conference, the last in-person conference I went to at the beginning of 2019. Nicole was there. And I actually told the designers, the people who came up with that term, I just don't agree. But really what I'm saying here is that we need to think about, it's not just developer productivity, developer experience, or developer whatever, or even AI. Really what it is that we need to take a lot of things and we need to combine them together. And we really need to use the best tool for the problem at hand. And what happens is that, someone's going to hear this and they're going to say, oh, wow, Dr. Nicole, and I'm assuming you're Dr. Storey too. That's just my assumption, but I'm sure that's where we are. They say all these great things, and you know what? Space is amazing. I actually share it with everyone I can see. I love it. There's a book. Your Accelerate book is right on the wall behind me right now. But I want to say that you realize that they're just giving you tools to make you better. They're not telling you how to be better. You know who can tell you how to be better? You or your team. And if you're looking for those answers externally, you're going to fail. And really what's going to come from externally are things that aren't important to your business. Like if you make widgets, if you want to make widgets faster because you know how to make widgets, productivity is going to help you. But if you can't figure out how to make a widget, all these tools, everything is just going to be another burden, and it's actually going to make you slower. And then you're just going to say that things just don't work. And you know what? You can turn this around, and if you think about it after this call, look at the word Kubernetes and why people do not like it. This is the reason why, because they don't understand. They're trying to use it as a crutch for something broken in their organization or their practice. And that's my controversial bit.
I love it. If it's okay, I have two favorite misconceptions, and one is going to be a little controversial. So I think Bryan may be on my train. One is that everyone thinks it's going to be a tool. It's going to fix your thing. And it's never a tool. Tech is easy. People are hard. And in general, the huge misconception that I always see around productivity is that you need to use a tool to fix your problem and that talking to people is going to slow you down. And so often we see that talking to other people will actually speed you up. because they can give you the context, they can tell you what's going to fix things. One-on-ones are not your enemy. Documentation is not your enemy. Good documentation, talking to people, having design reviews and design meetings. This is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I think it's disregarded at everyone's peril. So that's my first misconception. My second big misconception, that I think is maybe a little controversial, is that, and with a slight disclaimer, but you don't need an assessment. You don't need numbers. You don't need a benchmark. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. And people are going to be like, Nicole, from you? Yes, absolutely, from me. Nobody cares. No one needs the number. It's fine. Everyone wants a number. Everyone wants a benchmark. Everyone wants to compare. If that's what you really need, is some kind of carrot or some kind of stick to get better, I guess that's fine. Use what works for you. Also, it kind of doesn't matter if you just need to get better. It just needs to get better. You just need to figure out what, like Bryan was saying, you just need to figure out what's holding you back. And being better than somebody or being worse than somebody is not what's holding you back. Fixing the broken things are really what is holding you back. You don't need, also related, you don't need 1,000 metrics to tell you what's broken. You could walking down the hall and talking to someone about what's broken in their software or broken in their experience or broken in something will probably tell you what you can fix. You don't need the most perfect dashboard, Grafana something to tell you what's broken. You can just fix things. It will be fine. You don't need the perfect assessment. Just fix things. Everything's fine.
And I think with that, Nicole, like one of the things that's that brings up for me is almost that sometimes metrics can be harmful. I think about code coverage and kind of the damage that code coverage has caused. It's been helpful in many ways because it certainly allows you to look at the how much coverage your tests have for the code that you're delivering. But it's also one of those numbers that can be totally gamed, and you can end up investing a huge amount in test infrastructure that's also hard to maintain and becomes flaky over time. And so you can end up getting kind of very driven by the metrics in a really negative way that actually hurts productivity over time.
I love
Yeah.
that you bring this up, right? Oh, sorry.
No, I
Do you
was
want
just
to?
going to agree. I mean, I think about that. I actually do advocate run coverage on your local machine just to make sure that you tested what you thought you added. But at the macro level, it doesn't really do anything for you.
Yeah.
But
And so much of this is about culture too, right? So I back when I was with Dora, we did assessments, we offered numbers. It's fine. There are quick check tools that many people find, I will say, useful or insightful. It was always really interesting to see how people would react. Some teams really wanted to be in the high or the elite group because then it meant they could check out and they were done. Peace out. Cool. Other folks, leaders, were actually concerned because if they were elite, it meant there wasn't anywhere else to go. Other folks would check in and they would be elite and they didn't care. They'd be like, cool, okay, what's next still? The best, most innovative organizations would sometimes use it as a check, but they would still want to double down and find out what needed improved. So it's almost like the thing where they say flip a coin and it doesn't matter where it lands, it depends how you react to the answer. What really matters is how you react to the answer. Do you still really want to drive improvement? Or is this your excuse to check out and be done?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's also like, it's really easy to do the thing that's in front of you. The named thing, fixing a bug, improving your code coverage, whatever it is, that's easy. It's the things that Bryan was talking about earlier in terms of, driving alignment on where you're heading. That's actually the hard work.
Okay, next question. Where do you think the future of development is headed?
I can jump in on that one if you like. So could I change the question a little bit
Of course.
to be about where do you think the future of effective development is headed? You know, the companies that are doing well. Because I think that that's a nicer question to answer. I think we've all been touching on this a little bit. The companies that are doing really well, I think, recognize that their main asset is not the code, right, that is developed, but rather it's the developers that hold the ideas, the theories about what the code is doing, the representation of those ideas in their head. Peter Nauer talked about this back in 1984. And thinking about that, Nicole, I love that you mentioned about don't use metrics, talk to people, yay, qualitative research. When we did ask developers what made them feel productive, 94% of them said writing code, but 92 and 90% of them said it was talking to other people and learning something new. So making them feel empowered, recognizing that what they were doing had impact in terms of that other people cared about their work or that they could help other people and that they could learn to do better work in the future. So my hope is that the future of development in a more effective environment is thinking about how to empower the software engineer, how to support them as they are connected with their team, but also their communities and their users, and help them be responsible. And to feel responsible, because today's generation, they care about human values. They care about the software that they're writing. And in today's world, software developers, they have that power to switch from company to company if they don't feel that what they're doing is the right thing and if they're not themselves learning themselves, right, and contributing. So that's just one take on it.
I like that. Amanda.
It's a tough question. I mean, I think, I did an intern talk about 3 years ago. And it was kind of like, well, how would the internship of 2025 look different, right? And this was before a bunch of stuff that we had been working on kind of got released. But, I think in that era, you still had to spend a day and a half to set up your dev box. This was 3 years ago. You still had to I think there's a very challenging experience when you're a newbie at any team where you asking for help is really intimidating. And especially when a lot of people now are starting new jobs or starting their first job from their home office and never having the opportunity to actually learn from a mentor that's sitting next to them, how do they actually get that support for them to be successful? And then Margaret also talked about kind of the introduction of AI as a way to kind of assist developers to write the code that they need to write and to learn from, the code that their team had previously written or learn from what the community has written in the past to figure out kind of what's the kind of code they need to be able to write. And so what I envision and what I'd like to see happen is that, we have developer environments where the standard is that you can actually contribute meaningfully to the code base, that the infrastructure of setting up your dev box is not getting in the way of you being able to contribute to that code base, that the knowledge base that's established as in terms of how the code is actually being written is also codified and captured as a part of the code itself. And so you have, a way to be able to look at the code with annotations and other things like that so that you can actually see what are the conversations that happened that led us to this decision, or in which context was this decision made, or, what were the bugs or incidents that led us to change this dimension of the code. Because, everybody knows that developers really don't like to take the time to comment the code. And that's one of the big problems that we have in the code bases that we're building overall. And then also just the idea of like there needing to be written down best practices. I think the opportunity that we have with AI is to actually be able to derive what the best practices are and to be able to learn from other code examples as to why that is a best practice. Without having to have, as much documentation written so that everybody understands why. I'm not saying that documentation isn't still necessary. It absolutely is. At the end of the day, this is all about human-computer interfaces, and a programmer has to be able to reason about the program that they're writing. And so, that the documentation really helps them reason about it. But in terms of making sure that they're implementing best practices and things like that, I think that's where artificial intelligence can really help.
Great. Bryan?
Well, y'all just blowing my mind right now. I don't look it in the face, but I have been writing code for money for over 25 years. I have a 20-year-old daughter. People don't believe that either. And you know what? This whole AI thing just blows my mind. Nope, 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 nope. But actually, cool. Yeah, very cool. I'm gonna keep on investigating, but nope. But I think about these things, and I just want to. I don't know what the makeup of the people watching this video are going to be, but I just want to, as an old school developer, who's been through the ups and downs, I just wanted to share just a couple of things. Is that, we think about developer productivity and experience. I think that's good. Like Nicole says, it's more important about where you end up, not the metric. Sometimes you need metrics to get there, but sometimes you don't to get started. It's like if you've ever played a game of spades, first hand bids itself. We're not even going to talk about points on the first hand. But one thing to remember is that code is only the output of your actions at a given time. Don't get attached to it. It's gonna go away. Amanda mentioned something like VB6 back in the day. I bet you aren't running that in production right now. It's gonna go away. Java 17 just came out, and I know people are still running Java 8. Stop. You're running Java 11. Stop. There's better options out there. So remember that productivity overall isn't just a tool. It's a mindset, as Nicole and Margaret actually put out, that what we're trying to do is figure out the best way to create solutions to problems that we have with software in the least amount of time. Sometimes you code, sometimes you just punt on and then say, you know what, it'll just be easier if someone just wrote that number in rather than us trying to figure it out. But remember that productivity and experience aren't about the tooling. They're about what happens afterwards, because that's what we're optimizing for. If you work for a company, for better or for worse, you know what? We are trying to figure out how to build software for the cheapest amount of money with the least amount of people that will bring in the greatest amount of revenue. You know what? That's what it comes down to. And you have feelings about it, but these tools can help you feel better. These tools will make you feel not so much of a robot, that you don't have to repeat yourself, that you don't have to know everything. And if we keep looking at the world as constantly moving, we need to continue investing into our craft, our art, and our science, and just magic sometimes, because that's what computers are. That we realize that the people thinking about these problems, whether they be researchers or people who are actually just on the front lines, we need this constant yin and yang. We need both types of inputs, because this is how we go from back in the 70s, where it was a lot of assembler, a lot of old school Lisp, to now where we're talking about low code and no code seriously. It's not like the 4GLs where we were just like, oh, look at this. Nope, that didn't work. We're actually thinking about this seriously. And you know what, that GitHub AI thing, that's pretty cool. Don't get me wrong, it's cool. I have not tried it because, I don't know, it's like saying Candyman or something. And I figure if I say it too many times, the computer is going to attack me. But I really just think that, we need to think about these things and realize that we're only at a level. There's like unlimited levels, and we're always trying to level up to the next one. So just keep in mind that we need to find better ways to do what we're doing, whether it's research or actual practice. And we need to continue doing this. And that's just how it should be. So I'm off my soapbox now. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm super excited about the future and what it holds. And I'm with you, Bryan. I started on mainframe, so I've been around. I was a developer, and I love the points about making development more accessible, right? We have low code, we have no code. How do we make this easier to read and more accessible so that when there isn't as much documentation, it's fine? But yes, how do we leverage additional tools to help provide that documentation? I want to thank all of our panelists for being here with us today. I hope everyone has enjoyed the panel, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.